And welcome to another episode, 15 Minutes with DK. The first of the Triology is called OB Run Over. The Bible verse I used is Romans 2:7. It's a verse where you see God obligates himself in a diverse situation to reach people and give them an opportunity to hear and then react, receive the gospel. This goes counterclockwise to what a scoffer would spew out when mocking the Bible. All these make up the triology. All three go down as a supernatural phenomena. What makes these episodes more personal? Personally, I met each one of these personalities. The first of the series of the three, OB Run Over, has been uploaded to YouTube since 9/13/24. Second in series, getting more than what he bargained for. So with that, let the supernatural begin. As a chaplain, I met a Texan while walking a truck parking lot in Virginia. First spotting him while working on his semi, I asked, as I strolled by, we eyed each other, which turned into a conversation that led to him telling me a horrific time in his life, which he had scars to prove it. His story started when a friend asked Omar at 16 to attend a church service. So let's roll with it. Omar refused his friend's offer. He had on his mind party time. The nightlife was tugging on him, I'm sure, as a young boy's curiosity always gets up. Out into the nightlife, Omar went right into the hands of the cartel. It didn't end so well with Omar. Whatever happened, something enraged the cartel to pull a blade on Omar and slit him from his belly hole up 3 inches or so, as you can see the picture. 2 cuts they put into his back, and then they grabbed him by his hair or his head and was going to slit his throat. A policeman, unmarked, at the party instantly was on it and stopped the killing of Omar. Unfortunately for Omar, by the time he reached the ER, from a lack of blood, he slipped into a coma. Omar laid in an unconscious state for 40 days with no improvement. At the end of the 40 days, the doctor called the parents in and said, all indicators show your son, if the plug was pulled tonight, he will either be brain dead, human vegetable, or die. The doctor said, we're going to pull the plug at midnight, and I'm sure the parents didn't want to hear that. If there is no uptick in Omar's condition, the doctor is pointing up to the ceiling and said, go do what you must. In disarray, the parents replied, we are not Christians. Basically, they're agnostics, and we are not believers. The doctor replied back, go do what you must. We're pulling the plug at midnight. So with that, with little hope, the parents went on a mission looking for hope by walking down a city street in Texas until they found a church door that was open. And they entered in and introduced themselves to the pastor. And they told him the sob story. With everything being said, asked the pastor, the minister, would you and your congregation be willing to pray for our son who is being taken off the life support at midnight? The pastor acknowledged that he and his congregation would do so and pray for Omar. The doctor did say that after pulling the plug, Omar could be human vegetable, brain dead, and or die. The parents just weren't ready for their child to be dead. And the church, seeing the passion of the parents, went to work praying for Omar. So Omar is now hung in the balance between life and death, and the church is praying. And the doctor, good on his word, at midnight, was disconnecting the life support machine. I'm sure by now the Omar family members were all saying their last goodbyes. And then for the moment of truth, the clock hit midnight, hickory dickory dock, as the child's nursery rhyme would go. I'm not sure how far Omar's family lived from New Mexico. There are 2 towns in New Mexico off of Route 25 called Truth or Consequences. And the sign literally does read, Truth or Consequence, Route 25, exit 79. At the stroke of midnight, was the youngster going to exit the planet because of his consequences, or was truth going to prevail because God is still on his throne, listening to the prayers of his saints on the behalf of Omar's family? The prayer request they were asking for their son. Then came the moment of truth. The plug was pulled as the doctor promised. Voila, Omar woke up with none of the symptoms prescribed by the physician. The only thing left was the wounds done by the cartels, which you see in that picture, from a consequence of a wrong choice. I did ask Omar later, when did he get saved? And he said sometime later. Isn't God good? Returning to the OB Run Over series, Charles was being dragged to hell by a demon out of nowhere. A lifeline, a Bible verse would show up at the very moment Chuck needed it to set himself free. What are the odds on a human scale? Omar lay 40 days with no brain activity, good as dead, described by science. However, not by prayer. The prayer of the saints availed much before God. What are the chances a person beats the odds? We now have 2 cases, Charles and Omar, that they would come back and live normal lives. What illustration biblically do we have of a supernatural event? When God shows up, the impossible occurs. You'll find the event in John 11:39 with a man named Lazarus, who was dead 4 days. The Bible said he stinketh. When Christ called Lazarus up from the dead, and he did. He called him up from the dead and he came out. He floated out. But yet 2 weeks later, he was eating a meal with one responsible, bringing him back to life. What is the common denominator with these two stories? We have one more story to tell, and then we'll talk to you about the common denominator. The third in series is titled, The Angels Rejoice. Luke 15:10 is the scripture. Peter is the character figure in The Angels Rejoice, and all 3 men mentioned were given they were all given a stage name by me. We'll talk more about the common denominator after you listen to Angels Rejoice. Let the supernatural begin.